uncontrollable, and like a pressure gauge, having 5 or more, all in the red, can define an individual as having NPD. In other words, a true egomaniac. Frank displays the larger-than-life ego that many of us are familiar with. He has 3 traits and is relatively low on the ladder. But adding just one more trait can make a dramatic difference.
I'd hear about some disaster and people would go, "Oh God, I can't believe it," and they'd be obviously shaken. I'd be like, you know, I'd stare around and I'd be like, so what?
David sits on the next rung of the ladder. He has 4 characteristics associated with NPD, and the most dominant one is a lack of empathy. For fear of losing his job, he wishes to remain anonymous.
I felt it very much on September 11th, as a matter of fact. I mean, everybody seemed very shaken up by September 11th. And I thought, I don't live in New York. And I thought, boy, this isn't normal. Normal people don't feel this disconnected from the rest of humanity. I mean, they're not this selfish. Because people in my town were gathering out on the street and hugging and crying on September 11th. And I was just like, wow, something's definitely wrong with me, you know, because I'm not getting this.
Lack of empathy is one of the key features of NPD. It's very subtle. They don't really care. They don't care if you're hurt. They won't be sad if you're heartbroken. These individuals are ultimately unable to love. They don't have true, deep feelings of caring for others. But actually lack of true feelings, lack of feelings of guilt, lack of feelings of remorse in the more severe cases of NPD can actually facilitate you getting what you want. If you don't feel sorry because you've hurt somebody or somebody's lost because you've conned them or you've committed a fraud, then what the hell? You get on.
David's lack of empathy not only affects his outlook and attitude to others, it also affects his perception of himself. As a result, some of life's most emotional moments appear to pass him by.
I went to my father's funeral and people, you know, who are barely related to my dad are standing around crying. I wasn't happy that my father died, but I mean, I wasn't upset enough to cry. And I don't know why that is. I mean, because there's a certain amount of emotional barrenness involved in narcissism.
Even what many consider to be the happiest day of their lives leaves David cold.
When I got married, from the time I took my vows, I had no intention of being emotionally faithful. I had no intention of being emotionally committed. I probably had no intention of being physically faithful. It was really like I was just doing it because it was expected. You know, like, you want me to get married? Fine, I'll do it. You know, I will show up. I'll go to your wedding, but and I'll say your words, but it means nothing to me. If I meet a bridesmaid there, I don't know what might happen.
David paints a lonely existence of someone who has just 4 traits of NPD. To be clinically diagnosed, you need 5 or more. So, how can one tell? Psychologists have devised a simple test. Depending on how many times you answer yes to the following questions, may mean that you suffer from NPD.
Do people often fail to appreciate your very special talents or accomplishments? Have people told you that you have too high an opinion of yourself? Do you think a lot about the power, fame or recognition that will be yours someday? When you have a problem, do you almost always insist on seeing the top person? Is it very important to you that people pay attention to you or admire you in some way? And do you feel that you deserve special treatment? Do you often expect other people to do what you ask without question because of who you are? Do you often find it necessary to step on a few toes to get what you want? Would you say that you're not really interested in other people's problems or feelings? Are you often envious of others? Do you find that there are very few people that are really worth your time and attention? Thank you very much.
If you answered yes 5 times or more, it could mean that you have NPD. Malignant Self-Love by Dr. Sam Vaknin is one of the first true attempts to understand a narcissist.
The narcissist is addicted to a drug called narcissistic supply. Narcissistic supply is a fancy term, and it describes all forms of attention, both positive and negative. Narcissists are very utilitarian, very pragmatic, and very flexible, multi-purpose machines. They have what I call X-ray vision. They are able, instantly, to diagnose the weaknesses, vulnerabilities, soft spots, predilections, fears, hopes, and emotional needs of everyone around them, and to put it to use instantaneously, relentlessly, and ruthlessly. Narcissists never regret what they do, simply because they do not hold themselves responsible to the consequences of their actions.
Crossing these individuals can be a daunting experience, especially if you have to do it on a daily basis. The workplace is a familiar backdrop for tales of the egomaniac.
For about 10 years, I experienced incidences of bullying.
I would often sit in my car and not be able to drive home because I was either so angry or I was just in floods of tears.
The general manager had a habit of breaking down someone's reputation and then building it back up, and I became his target.
Charlotte was once a successful personnel manager for a high street store. Soon her dream job turned into a nightmare when her female boss began to make her life unbearable.
When I first met her, she was extremely charming, very friendly and personable, and I felt that we would have a very strong working relationship. It was within a couple of months that things actually started to change. Her behaviour became very, very cool. She became very obtuse with me and seemed to constantly be critical of the work that I was doing.
Adrian was a manager at a software company until a new boss joined the firm.
My line manager called me into a room for an informal chat. In that chat, it turned out that it was a disciplinary hearing, and he said, "We're going to have to give you a written warning," which was a real surprise to me. And he said, "Well, your performance is being monitored. People are watching you."
Ellen, the school teacher, claims the headmistress launched a smear campaign designed to ruin her.
The daily inspections became very much an intrusion in my relationship with my pupils. That was what was the most difficult part of it. It made me feel very nervous. It made me feel I was being watched. The black shadow coming into the classroom.
Most narcissists become bullies in the workplace. They taunt, they torture, they sadistically inflict pain, sometimes unnecessarily, mainly on their underlings. They are obsequious to their higher-ups and sadists to their underlings.
I became totally lacking in confidence.
I was feeling ill.
I felt crushed.
So I knew that I was under greater pressure than I could
I
bear.
didn't feel like getting out of
I
bed.
became extremely explosive at home because I was a complete nightmare to live with.
No way was I ever going to have a mental breakdown. But by God, it happened.
I'm not a person who would ever commit suicide, but the thoughts were very persistent.
Narcissists resent weaknesses, resent vulnerabilities, and as a result, they resent weak people, vulnerable people. That means that narcissists have an inbred aversion to children, the elderly, sick people, weak people, vulnerable people. Actually, this provokes in the narcissist a sadistic impulse to inflict further pain, to exploit the vulnerability, to enhance the weakness, to prey upon it. Narcissists are predators, and wounded animals are the ideal prey.
Finding someone with 5 traits or more of NPD isn't easy. Unsurprisingly, it's far more common to find someone who knows a narcissist rather than someone